Good morning, and thank you everybody for coming here today. I am joined here today by Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 4, Lesley Briones, and two families who have been directly impacted by these issues that we're going to talk about today, as well as two attorneys who have represented folks who have been impacted by these issues. We're here today to announce that the Harris County Attorney's Office is taking steps to sue Patriot Title, a local title and escrow company, and Rachel Luna, who has deemed herself the Texas Title Queen, as well as entities that are affiliated with both those companies and with Ms. Luna. Over the last 10 years, dozens of people in our communities have accused these companies of scamming people in real estate transactions. So today we're here to say enough is enough, and Harris County is stepping in. Buying a home is one of the most important decisions that people or family can make. It is at times a incredibly scary process that to new first-time home buyers can be something that's incredibly intimidating. Title and escrow companies are integral to that process. Title companies are supposed to be the neutral third party that research the previous ownership of the property and ensure that the person who says that they own it actually owns the property. Escrow companies are supposed to be the neutral third party that hold the buyer's earnest money deposit and are supposed to send that money to the seller once the sale closes. People across our county have trusted Patriot Title and Ms. Luna and these other related companies to do these very things. But what we've seen is once the transaction is over, they've discovered that they've been scammed. Patriot Title and its affiliated companies have done several types of schemes that I want to walk through here now. They have received escrow funds from a buyer, and at times this is substantial amounts of money, and refused to send those funds to the seller after the sale is closed. They have served as the title company for home sales where the so-called seller forged a deed. So we're talking about transactions for real estate where the basis of that very transaction, the deed, is forged. They have participated in real estate transactions, giving the appearance of being a neutral escrow agent, while actually having an interest in the property that is being purchased. And they have failed to disclose title defects on the property, which means that unsuspecting buyers come in to purchase a home only to find out later that the seller didn't own that home free and clear. More than 20 of these victims have sued Patriot Title, Ms. Luna, and these affiliated companies in Harris County over the last decade. But in many instances, Patriot Title has strung them along in those cases. There are instances where they just flat out refuse to participate and a default judgment is issued against them. There are instances where that judgment is issued and they just refuse to pay on it. There are instances where they've sat down and negotiated a settlement, only to then ignore that settlement and force the other side to go and get a judgment against them. And of course, there are many instances where they just repeatedly refuse to pay. Many of the victims of this fraud, of these scams, are elderly people or people who can't afford to fight. And what's important to note is when I talk about these 20 lawsuits, I'm just talking about the people who have the time and the money to be able to go out and hire a lawyer to file these lawsuits. There could be many more people throughout our county who have been victimized by Patriot Title and these entities. We're here today to say enough is enough. It's time for government, Harris County, to step in and do something to protect the public interest. So here's what we're doing. The Harris County Attorney's Office is starting the process of filing a lawsuit against Patriot Title, Ms. Luna, and these related entities to get a court to require them to stop the scams. We're also in communication with the Texas Department of Insurance to discuss Patriot Title's insurance license, right? In order to do this type of business here in the state of Texas, you have to be licensed. And so we're going to have conversations with the Department of Insurance about Patriot Title continuing to do this work in Texas. And the last thing we're doing is we're making the public aware because we need to know the full scope of this victimization. When these lawsuits are filed by individual victims, it's about a specific instance. One instance over here in Precinct 4, one instance over here in Precinct 3, one instance up here in Precinct 1. But as government officials, it's our job to go after the full scope of the scamming and the fraudulent conduct to ensure that these people are in the best position to be made whole and to ensure that Patriot Title and these companies are held accountable. So what we're asking people is, if you're out there, if you see this on TV and you have had an instance where you've done business with Patriot Title or Ms. Luna or any of the companies related to them in real estate transactions, We need you to visit cao.harriscountytx.org or email consumerhelp@harriscountytx.gov, because we want to hear your story so that we can understand the full scope of these problems, and when this lawsuit gets filed, your issues are included as well. We can't allow people in our community to be taken advantage of. Not every person can afford a lawyer. Not every person has the time to go through and try to fight it out in the courts when they've been scammed. And when this happens, we see that people end up suffering in silence. So as the Harris County Attorney, I'm going to make sure that these folks have a voice in the courtroom against companies like Patriot Title that target our most vulnerable populations. Next, we're going to hear from some other stakeholders. We're next going to hear from Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 4, Lesley Briones, whose precinct, like all the other precincts, has been home to some of these scams that have been perpetrated against residents of Harris County. Commissioner.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd first like to thank our Harris County Attorney, Attorney Menefee, who he and his team every day, all day, are helping to advance justice in Harris County. So thank you for all the work that you and your team do every day, and in particular for bringing this critical issue to the forefront. As a fellow lawyer and as a former civil court judge, making sure that Harris County is as just, as fair, and as equitable as possible is fundamentally important to me, my colleagues, and our county attorney's office. Home ownership is a pillar of the American dream. The process of buying a home is complex and confusing. We need to be sure that everyone here in Harris County is treated fairly. And these dozens of individuals who have come forward with lawsuits, and the dozens of individuals who may not have come forward yet, they need justice. And we will do everything we can as a county to ensure that justice is obtained in these cases, that we are doing everything possible to protect and preserve the rights of all Harris County residents. And meanwhile, that we are being proactive, because housing is a human right, and making sure we have equitable and fair access to housing. I'm going to give you 3 recent examples of actions Commissioner's Court has taken in terms of the proactive steps to make housing more equitable here in Harris County. First, in February, we passed $15.3 million of federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, for single-family acquisition. Then in April, an additional $15 million to acquire and sell a minimum of 80 single-family homes, and making sure that there's long-term affordability, keeping them in the Harris County Community Land Trust. And we are, meanwhile, looking to invest additional federal funds. And again, thank you to President Biden and our local congressional delegation for sending these funds to Harris County. We are looking to invest additional federal funding in multifamily home acquisition so that there is this equitable access to housing. So both on the proactive front, that is policy making, and where needed, using the justice system to make sure that any potential bad actors are punished for their deeds, we will be working tirelessly, because we are committed to making sure that Harris County is as just as possible. If anyone here is watching, to our County Attorney Menefee's points a second ago, please contact the Harris County Attorney's Office. We work for you, and we are here to help ensure justice. Ahora en español. Bueno, gracias al fiscal del condado, Attorney Menefee, por su liderazgo y su interminable búsqueda de justicia. Debemos hablar en contra de los individuos que buscan defraudar a los residentes, especialmente aquellos que son más vulnerables. La propiedad de vivienda es un sello distintivo del sueño americano. Este tipo de operaciones están dirigidas a nuestras poblaciones más vulnerables. Nuestros residentes no deberían tener que gastar miles de dólares en un abogado porque una compañía de títulos pudo haberlos defraudado. Estoy orgullosa de apoyar al fiscal del condado, Attorney Menefee, para que estas familias obtengan la justicia que merecen. Como la comisionada del condado de Harris, precinto número 4, como abogada y también fui jueza, la justicia es fundamentalmente importante para todas nuestras familias. Si uno de ustedes están viendo y algo similar tal vez ha pasado a usted o a su familia, por favor, contáctanos. Contacta al condado de Harris, especialmente el fiscal de condado, Attorney Menefee. Estamos aquí para servirles y estamos aquí para luchar que la justicia en Harris County del condado de Harris siempre está mejorando, porque eso es lo que merecemos. Muchas gracias y gracias por la oportunidad, and I look forward to hearing from the families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you to Commissioner Briones and Precinct for the continued partnership on these very important matters. Every single time that there is a fraud perpetrated against someone or these types of scams happen, you know, we're not dealing with this out in the ether. These are real victims who are impacted. So we thought it was incredibly important to make sure that you hear from folks who have been directly impacted. We have two families here represented today, folks who have been in direct business with these companies that we wanted you to hear from. We're going to first hear from Myosha Robinson, who's going to tell us her story about her interaction with these companies and the harm that she has suffered.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Myosha Robinson. I am the spokesperson for my father, Cloyd Robinson, and my aunt, Grace Rice. They're the last living heirs to their mother's home. And it wasn't until a third party they allowed to live in the home did not keep up with the taxes that they found out. They went down to the county appraiser's office, and they worked out a payment plan. They're retired, they're on disability, and they worked out a payment plan to be able to try and catch up on the taxes and save their mother's home. On one of the months that I went to go make a payment, that's when I found out that the title had been taken. The house had been sold. There was no research done. If it had been done properly by the title company, then they would have shown that there were affidavits of heirship on record that that home was not able to be sold by that third party. So they were one of the few families that were lucky that we were able, as their children, to help and step in and retain an attorney to be able to try and fight it. So at this moment, we are going through the process of trying to get compensation for them, for the home that they lost. This was their childhood home that they no longer have. We had to halt building on the home, and right now it's a struggle because that was money they didn't have, and their history is taken from them. So at this point, you know, in the 5th Ward and 3rd Ward districts, this is not just happening to them, it's happening to hundreds of families. And like Attorney Menefee said, they don't have the funds to fight this. So they either have to let it go and just watch it go away from them, which is not right, it's not fair. So I do want to thank the County Attorney's Office for reaching out, giving a voice to our parents, the struggle they're going through, and any other families, please reach out so that you can try and get help before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Next, we're going to hear from Charles Kelly. When my team came down here and they were talking about how the families were upstairs and they had come down here into the room, it was mentioned that before they came into the room, everybody got together for a prayer. And I think it just really illuminates how, you know, for us, Commissioner Briones, this is about stepping in and helping people, and it's about work. But for these folks, it's about real tangible things that they lost, actual victims that we have here today. So I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Kelly to tell you his story.
Thank you. Good morning. My story of our home being taken by Patriot was that we were in trouble as well, and we all decided to sell. Patriot decided to go ahead and buy it from us, and we didn't hear from them again. The only thing we heard was that our house had been destroyed in our Acres Home neighborhood, and they didn't contact us on anything. They didn't try to tell us that they were destroying the house, and they didn't give us any kind of funds. They went to closing and did everything before we even noticed that the house was gone. The rest of my family is getting on up in age, so we had to get an attorney as well. My oldest sister got an attorney to represent us in this matter. We've been dragging this on since 2018, and I hope that the rest of the people out there that has been punished by this company will come forward and help us out as well, so we can get some resolve here. That's about all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Okay, we got two more speakers and then we'll take questions. Next, we're going to hear from two attorneys who are representing individuals that have been victimized from Patriot Title or one of these affiliated entities. So I'll let you all decide who's going to go first, but we'll have you up, and then Sergio, you can follow hot.
Thank you. The term con artist or con man is actually an abbreviated version of the term confidence man, which was coined by an American reporter in the 1800s. And the concept is that victims of a fraud place their confidence in the perpetrator of the fraud, who then takes advantage of that confidence. And that's exactly what's happened here. My name is Ahad Khan. I'm an attorney who represented the sellers in the sale of a commercial property here in Houston. It was a large transaction, north of $700,000. They chose Patriot Title as the title company that they wanted to do business with. Patriot Title, instead of fulfilling and completing the task as is required by the contract and by law, held on to the money and paid it out to my clients on their own timetable at their own discretion. Kind of like how you would feed a stray dog whenever you want. They filed suit. The confidence games and the schemes did not end just because a lawsuit was filed. The lawsuit was filed. The default judgment that Mr. Menefee mentioned this morning is a mechanism that is used when a defendant in a case does not answer the lawsuit or does not otherwise appear in court to defend the case. That's what happened here. I've been practicing law for about 9 years. This is the only time in my career that I've ever had to file for a default judgment. During the process of trying to recoup the money, one of my clients tried to deposit a $40,000 check, one of those piecemeal payments, into his bank account. The check bounced, and the bank closed his account because of suspected fraud on his part. When he brought this to the attention of Patriot Title, they told him, well, maybe it's because you're Muslim, and that's why it happened. So far, in dealing with the Harris County Attorney's Office, I can say that I'm thoroughly impressed with the compassion, the conviction, the courage that they've shown in bringing this case. And I encourage anyone who's been impacted by this, no matter how small or large, do not overthink it. Step forward, contact the attorney's office, and let them know what happened to you. And before I step aside and let Sergio talk about what happened with his clients, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege and just say, these days, it is all too easy to become cynical about our institutions, be it the government, the press, or the justice system. But I think today is a great example of what can be achieved when these institutions and individuals come together to protect the community and do the right thing.
Good morning. My name is Sergio Perez. I am an associate attorney with Chavana Law located in the Aldine District on the northeast side of Houston, Texas. As part of my work up there, we defend and prosecute claims of fraud, and we represent some of the more vulnerable components of our community: first-generation Americans, immigrants, non-native English speakers. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of bad actors that prey on these persons, and the bad actors in these fraudulent transactions vary. There's sometimes individual sellers, notaries that don't follow protocol, title companies, or LLCs, other companies used to disguise how these different entities are controlled by one and the same person. However, through the last few years of working dozens of real estate fraud cases in the Houston area, I've identified some common denominators, one of them being Patriot Title and Rachel Luna, the self-proclaimed real estate queen, title queen of Texas. Patriot Title and Rachel Luna have gained the reputation of rubber stamping closings despite obvious defects in title and ignoring standard procedures. Many of the cases that I've reviewed and that have involved Patriot Title and Rachel Luna could have and should have been avoided had they diligently and honestly conducted and represented the transaction to all the parties involved. However, they instead chose to ignore blatant defects and omit information from the parties. Some of those omissions include failing to disclose joint ownership and only having partial completion of documents, omitting signatures, failing to verify that taxes were paid, and intentional acts such as failing to disclose that the seller, the selling entity, is sometimes controlled and owned by Rachel Luna herself. This has led to a series of cases against Rachel Luna and Patriot Title directly from people that have been affected, from victims. It's also created a large wake of other cases between buyers and sellers with no direct action towards Patriot Title and Rachel Luna that have been affected by their wrongdoings and their omissions. It's important that I note that in a traditional real estate transaction, a title company owes a duty of loyalty, honesty, care, and full disclosure to both the seller and the buyer. However, my investigations have made it increasingly clear that Patriot Title has sided with one side or the other on one or more of these transactions time and time again. A lot of the sellers, not all of them, but some of the parties that are in bed with Patriot Title and Rachel Luna seek out the services of Patriot Title to conduct closings that other diligent, honest, and competent title companies would not conduct a closing on. The affected parties in these real estate transactions are often unfamiliar with this reputation, and they place their trust and their confidence in Patriot Title serving the transaction as a neutral party that would disclose all the necessary information for them to make informed decisions and to protect themselves. And because they don't view Patriot Title as an interested party or an opponent in these transactions, they make they often don't question their diligence or their honesty in undertaking this transaction. As many of the persons speaking today have pointed out, they're not always a neutral party, and they've maintained a do-whatever-it-takes attitude for completing closings. This has made them a sought-out title company for anybody interested or involved in real estate fraud in Houston to conduct business through them. Real estate fraud in Houston has become increasingly sophisticated. There are numerous parties involved in all of these transactions. A lot of the protections and requirements by law to ensure that these transactions are done honestly, ethically, and securely have been infiltrated by parties working together to defraud one or more of the persons involved. I'm here today to speak on behalf of those families in my community that I know have been victimized by Luna and Patriot Title. I'm here to let the victims know that they are not voiceless, that they have legal recourse and they have rights, regardless of immigration status, social economic standing, or income. I have worked on dozens of these cases diligently, representing families just like yours, if you're out there and you're victimized, to find justice and to get something back. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that the economies of litigation on a case like this, especially for people buying their first home, for families struggling to make ends meet, makes it sometimes uneconomical or impossible. As a first-generation American, as a son of immigrants, I can empathize and I understand the difficult position that a lot of these victims find themselves in. And I know it takes a lot of strength to step up and speak up as to your own victimization. I know there's a sense of vulnerability, but I can tell you with confidence that I have full faith in Harris County, in their ability to listen, to understand, and to prosecute these claims, not just to bring justice to you, but to bring justice to your neighbors and to keep these things from happening. Because real estate fraud is a real and growing issue that we need to not just curb, but we need to eradicate. So with that, I do ask anybody with any information to not shy away from this challenge, but to come together in a united front, present your claims, and fight back against real estate fraud. Thank you.
Okay, as we wrap up, traditionally real estate fraud cases under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act isn't a business that the Harris County Attorney's Office has been in, but in seeing more and more of these examples, as the housing market is continuing to boom throughout Harris County, we think that this is necessary work. So we're going to make sure that these communities are protected, that these people are protected, and you can expect that if we see cases like this, we will pursue them. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. All right. Thank you all very much.